Blacksmithing is an ancient art, an ancient art form. Back in the day, steel processing or metal processing was very expensive, very time consuming. Steel was considered a semi-precious metal. Only kings and queens could afford having anything made out of it. Without blacksmiths, we would still be smashing stuff with rocks and biting stuff with our teeth. Any craftsman of any period that use any kind of metal tools would have got their tools from the blacksmith. Blacksmiths are the only ones that make their own tools. Your stonemasons, your woodworkers, your carpenters all had to get their tools from there. Pots, pans, eating utensils, literally anything, buckets, shovels, everything came from the blacksmith. Blacksmith was jack of all trades, somewhat doctors for a while because they could make fine instruments for surgeries and stuff like that. They were dentists for a long time because they were the only ones that had pliers or could make pliers that would for tooth extraction, anything like that, or picks. Of course, everyone thinks of blacksmithing and shoeing horses. Back in the day, the farrier was the lower trade. You were a blacksmith, you weren't a farrier. That was somebody else's job. Today, farrier is a very highly skilled trade, so it's role reversed there. So blacksmith's main tools, you got the anvil and the fire. Obviously, without the fire, you couldn't get anything hot enough to work with. The anvil is just a solid chunk of steel. Over time, it's evolved into very specific shapes and patterns. There's different styles for farriers, for knife making, for chain making. So yeah, depending on what you're doing, you would have a specific style of anvil. And again, now your hammers, and you have many different types of hammers. You can have a cross peen, that's a Swedish pattern. You can have just a double flat-ended. There's ball peen. Your typical British would have a flat end and a ball end with a round head. I prefer that. I prefer the Swedish pattern. And then for shorter work, you have tongues. You have bypass tongues, where the work can actually be held beside the tongues. Bigger piece, obviously. Box jaws. Got bolt tongues, so the box jaws for holding flat piece of flat metal in there, so that holds it good and solid. When you're working with bigger stuff, you obviously need to stay away from the hot end of the steel. And then there's the blacksmith's vise, the post vise. It's meant to be hammered on. It has a leg that goes all the way down to the ground, so the force of the blow is transferred to the ground, not to the vise. And then hood, get most of the smoke out. Start taking the steel down to a taper. So just splitting, or cutting the nail off the bar, takes out the stub. Ooze that back in the fire. Back in the header. Unfinished nail. Sharpening stone, obviously. They used to use just hand stones, wet stones, right, and do everything by hand. Then eventually they came up with the wheel. You got some that are hand powered. That takes 2 people. Or you got this nifty little one that's foot powered. Takes a lot of arm strength out of it, and still takes a very long time. Yeah, eventually it gets it down, sharpens everything. So handy invention. So the post vise, it's a little bit. Oh, this one's in very good shape. Okay, has the long post, goes all the way down to the ground. So when you put your work in and you hammer on it, the force transferred from here to your jaws goes to the ground instead of onto the base, so it makes it stronger, and you can beat on these things all day and they won't break. A regular modern vise, it'll break at the base because that's the only place it's supported. Before we had the hand crank blower, the top piece would rise and fall, and your air cherry would be attached to your forge, and that's where you would get your air blast from. Again, you just pull up and down on the handle. I should get that working. Yeah, very efficient. You can double acting, triple acting. Just means it has more chambers, so it's a more consistent airflow. Centrifugal air blower. Turn the handle. Gear set inside. Blower wheel on the front. Air goes down to your fire pot and up into your fire. Much more efficient than the bellows style, much more compact. The more you crank it, the more air you get. The more air you get, the hotter the fire gets. So it's a wagon wheel. When they're made to a general size. But if it's too big or too small, they can stretch the steel with this handle, and it'll actually grab, and well, this one's set up to pull, so it'll pull it together, push the steel together to make it smaller. So for sizing your wheels. So mechanical drill press, back before electricity. So you would crank the handle, and yeah, they got them too close together. So you crank the handle, spins the drill bit. You just got a heavy weight on there just so it gives it inertia. And then this pawl up on top, as it's cranking, it's pulling on a lever here, which then spins this, which forces the drill bit into the steel. So that's what's called a post vise, because it literally attaches to a post.